Good evening. My name is Arlene Cruz, and I am in the Addictions Family Counseling course. I'm here to discuss the movie from 1994, which is When a Man Loves a Woman. So we're going to dive into this family dynamic. So we have Alice, who is the mother, and the AFM, which is the addicted family member. You have Michael, who is her husband. So Alice is a counselor at a school, and Michael is an airline pilot. You have their daughter, Jessica, who is Alice's biological daughter, and Michael has adopted her. And then you have their biological child together, and her name is Casey. So getting into this, you have Alice and Michael. They are together. They've had a family. They're trying to get through life together. And then you have them going on a trip together where you see that Alice spirals out of control with her drinking. So Alice is an alcoholic, and she has a drinking problem. They go on vacation to Mexico together, then by themselves, and then you see her getting very drunk, and they are on a boat together, and she ends up falling off a boat, and Michael has to jump into the water and save her. The following day, Michael confronts Alice about her drinking and that he's noticed that she's drinking a lot more these days. And she says that she promises not to continue drinking anymore. Once time passes, Alice struggles to continue to keep this promise to Michael, and you see her getting out of bed at night, in the middle of the night, and she goes to her laundry room where she keeps a bottle of vodka, which she later tells Michael that she prefers vodka because he cannot smell that. She begins to drink a quart a day, and she ends up again habitually drinking to the point where one day she gets home from work after school, and when she sees her daughters, her and Jess get into a little spat, but she is so intoxicated that when Jess tells her that she did her homework, she ends up slapping her really hard in the face, to the point that you see Jess run to her room and she's crying. Alice gets in the shower super intoxicated and ends up passing out in the shower, falling into the glass door and onto the floor. And Jess later finds her mother passed out on the floor, intoxicated. Michael's away on a trip, a work trip, and Jess ends up calling Michael for help. So he ends up getting back to her, and Alice goes to the hospital. While they're in the hospital, Michael tells her that they're gonna get her help. She confesses that she's been drinking a quart a day, that she can't stop drinking, that she doesn't know how to stop drinking, and she's really struggling with a lot of feelings and emotions. So Alice ends up going to rehab. You see Alex going through a 3-day detox, where she's, obviously going through withdrawals, feeling sick. The rehab center, after 2 weeks, lets her see Jess and Casey and her husband, Michael. And while she's there, she tells Michael that she's doing a little better and that she really needs the people in rehab to get through, what she's going through at the moment. Michael's anticipating her to come back and be better. So once a month passes, she comes back home. They're trying to work through transitioning of where she was always intoxicated. Now she's no longer intoxicated. She's trying to deal with being a sober version of herself. Michael, who is constantly feeling like he needs to fix everything, still feels that way. And she feels like she needs to do a better job of, being a mother now that she's doing better and she's in her sober mind. So there's a lot of conflict there, because when Alice was in rehab for a month, Michael ended up taking the primary caregiver's part and taking care of his daughters, as he was always away on work trips. So he wasn't prior to that. Alice was the primary caregiver for both her daughters. So he took on that role. So once she came out of rehab, he had taken on all these responsibilities that he wanted to continue to do, and she felt the need to still be their mother, and try to navigate through her sobriety and be a mother, and then, gain her credibility back in her job at the school. So Michael and Alice struggle so much that they end up going to counseling, and I believe it's couples counseling, where they discuss how they feel about each other. She states that he's belittling her because when she tries to discipline the children, he intervenes and ends up giving the daughters other consequences or whatnot, and she doesn't want to be belittled in front of her children. And then Michael is annoyed because he feels rejected by Alice, because when he wants to go and have physical intimacy with his wife and all that, she's been withdrawn from that. So he's frustrated with her because of that, and because she doesn't want to spend as much time with him. So going back to the book, I would suggest going through the clinical family addiction assessment phases while in therapy, identifying the introduction phase, the strengthening assessment phase, understanding the substance. So introduction of what's going on in this family dynamic, we already know what that is. Strengthening the assessment phase, really truly assessing what parts, who is doing what and what is going on. Understanding the substance use, so understanding Alice's substance abuse, and then reestablishing commitment in that family unit. So reestablishing the commitment between Alice really and Michael, as their children are really young. Casey's only 4 years old. I believe Jess is between the age of 7 and 8. So she's a little bit older and understands a little bit more, but not quite at that adolescent age yet. So that's where I would start. And then I would also go into the sequential family addiction model, where you invite the family to consider making significant changes, discussing their feelings for one another, how they can work through now Alice being sober, how Michael doesn't need to fix everything. He needs to let Alice feel whatever it is she's feeling, and then, take that in first. Michael does end up, towards the end of the movie, going to, I believe it's like AA for family members, and he ends up going to that. And he, at first when he started, he really didn't like it and didn't want to be a part of it. But in the end, it truly helped him see, how he could effectively help his wife, and how he really was he was hearing his wife, but he really wasn't listening to his wife and her needs. So that's a part of it. And then just making sure that Alice continues to communicate how she feels, and whether it's how she's feeling about her addiction or how she's feeling about what's going on in their family life, their family dynamic, to Michael. So that would be that. And then also reestablishing excuse me, the connection between Alice and her oldest daughter, as her oldest daughter was really the one who saw a good majority of what she was doing, what was going on in the home. She saw her drinking. She saw when she would wrap her bottles up in, newspapers and throw them into the trash can. She saw her mom drunk. She said, oh, mommy used to, look like she was being sleepy, but really it was because she was drinking. So she experienced all that. And I think that, there needs to be not only a family therapy for Michael and Alice, them as a unit, but also diving into sequential family addiction model where, you have the marital, you have the parental, and then you have the siblings, which is the two daughters, where Jess doesn't have to feel like a mom to Casey because mom was always drunk, and reestablishing the bond between the mother and the daughter. So that's another whole thing that needs to be addressed and reestablished. And then obviously that has to do with structural family, where I broke up the marital, the parental, and the siblings. So I think that would work best as interventions in their therapy. I also want to talk about, whether if this was something where it would happen right now locally and I would be the therapist to service these clients, I would also mention to them that there are other services that they can look into. If something were to happen where she would feel like she wanted to kill herself or things of that nature, a critical emergency call to 211. There is also in St. Lucie County, the New Horizons of Treasure Coast and Okeechobee, where they offer family therapy, crisis services, children's mental health and substance abuse services. And they also have the mobile response team 24 hours a day. So that could be something that they can look into. So again, that's New Horizons of the Treasure Coast and Okeechobee. So with that being said, thank you so much for your time. And this was a lot of fun. And just have a great night. Bye.